Welcome, Pod.
Welcome back into TCM Pod. Chris Mathis, Spencer Mathis. Glad to be back here with you guys, coming off of breaking news earlier this evening as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have officially agreed to terms with veteran quarterback Baker Mayfield to a 3-year deal, one in which will pay him $30 million this season, $30 million in 2025, including $20 million guaranteed. And then in 2026, he'll get $40 million, $5 million per year in incentives, $100 million total deal for Baker Mayfield, with incentives with a max value of $115 million for the 28-year-old quarterback coming off of his career best season, Spencer, in year one in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has their quarterback there. Some would still call a bridge quarterback when you look at the market and say, okay, this is about where he's at in terms of his value. But the Buccaneers, again, got a good deal considering what a guy, Daniel Jones, there in New York received from the Giants. And I'm not mad about this deal whatsoever. In fact, I'm happy with the deal, the re-signing of Baker Mayfield. And I knew that when Mike Evans was signed earlier in the week, late last week, that it was only a matter of time before Baker Mayfield came to an agreement with the Buccaneers to say, hey, this is our franchise quarterback, at least for the near foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think it was a need the Buccaneers wanted to address, and now they've signed some big free agents. They've gotten the three guys that they really wanted to keep, I think, first off, and then now you got to worry about still Levante David, of course, and then Tristan Wirfs if you want to go ahead and do the extension now for him. But being able to say that you kept Baker Mayfield now, Mike Evans, and Antoine Winfield Jr., I think that's all the Buccaneers really wanted out of this free agency. Now, the main thing would be to look at Levante David, and what we heard from Jason Light earlier this week is that usually he doesn't make the big splashes in free agency. He wants to keep the guys that he himself has drafted or has been here since he came to Tampa, like a guy with Levante David. But again, Mike Evans, what was that? Would that have been Jason Light's first pick with the?
It was, yeah, his first overall draft pick in 2014.
Yeah, so it's always a great thing to be able to keep your own. And again, 10 years now in Tampa for Mike Evans, of course. And last year you saw him with Baker Mayfield dominate. But this is a huge re-signing. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago, we were saying, hey, out of these two guys, who would you want to keep, Baker Mayfield or Mike Evans? We both chose, I think, Baker Mayfield there. But being able to keep Mike Evans as well is a huge plus because I think these two guys, at the end of the day, were intertwined in what they wanted to do. As soon as we heard Mike Evans got re-signed, the first thing he kind of talked about was Baker Mayfield being an elite quarterback, how he wants Baker Mayfield to stay. Guess what? The next day, the Buccaneers keep Mike Evans as well, so that's huge. And I've been on the Baker Mayfield hype train ever since Tom Brady retired the first time. Go through a couple of tweets here just to float my own boat. From 2022, March 20th, almost 2 years ago now, I wanted the Buccaneers to trade a 6th-round pick for Baker Mayfield whenever he was on the Browns. And then a couple of days later, actually a couple of days before, March 12th. What is today? March 10th? March 10th or 11th? Yeah, March 11th. On March 12th, I tweeted, if not Deshaun Watson, because if you remember, Deshaun Watson was a main target for the Buccaneers in 2022. He was a target for a lot of people, but thank God the Buccaneers did not end up with that guy. But I said, if not Deshaun Watson, I want the Buccaneers to get Baker Mayfield. Eventually, we end up with Baker Mayfield after going through Cleveland, Carolina, Los Angeles Rams. And I think that one revitalization of Baker Mayfield's career was that 98-yard touchdown drive that he led with the Rams. Now the offensive coordinator of the Buccaneers is that guy. And also, you've got Baker Mayfield staying with the Bucs. And I think that's a huge deal for Tampa Bay because you look at the quarterbacks available. I think it was either Baker Mayfield or most likely a guy like Russell Wilson. And I take Baker Mayfield at this point a million times over Russell Wilson. He has no stability in the league, in my opinion. Justin Fields, I don't think the Buccaneers want to restart with anybody either. I don't think he's a great quarterback as well. And then you look past the draft, past the first three quarterbacks, the next guy that would maybe make sense would be Michael Penix Jr. But is he really, I mean, is he going to be a guy that's going to be drafted in the first 2 rounds? I don't think so. He may make it at the end of the second round. He's obviously not a first-round guy. But again, left-handed quarterbacks in the NFL don't usually work out, and we saw how he did against a top-tier defense in Michigan in the national championship, and it wasn't good. So Baker Mayfield was the Buccaneers guy all along, regardless of the smoke screens that him and his agent put out about him wanting $40 million. Buccaneers get a team-friendly deal. They can get rid of him after 2 years if they need to, with just, I think, they would only lose like $30 million in dead cap, which is a lot, but you look at Russell Wilson losing $85 million just over 2 years for the Denver Broncos, and you look at the Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield's deal, and you're excited about it, and Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans both back in Tampa for 2024.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Again, very excited to see these two get back to work. And what was interesting to me whenever Mike Evans was trying to come to an agreement with the Buccaneers last week was that his agent said that Mike Evans wants to play, and we talked about it last week, Spencer. Mike Evans wants to play with a quarterback he considers elite, doesn't want to play with a rookie quarterback. And then you see him re-sign with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So at that point, Baker Mayfield is so-called elite. Well, he joined the WDAE airwaves right here, the J&Z show. I'm in the iHeartRadio studio right now, recording this at Feather Sound in Tampa Bay, Florida. And he joined J&Z show, and he basically called every NFL quarterback elite in a roundabout way. Was that if you're an NFL starting quarterback, you're elite. And in my opinion, it felt as if maybe he was trying to get Baker Mayfield a few more $1 million with his contract. Hey, Baker Mayfield's elite. He's that guy. But at the end of the day, it wasn't as if he was necessarily saying that Baker Mayfield is an elite quarterback. He's simply saying that any starting quarterback in the NFL could be considered elite. Now, do I agree with that? Not at all. I think that there's only a couple of guys. I would say maybe 5 to 7 quarterbacks I would consider elite. It might just sit right at 5. That's really hard to pick and choose right off the top of my head. I don't even know if I'd consider Josh Allen elite. He's extremely good, but the way he turns over the football, would I call him elite? I don't know if I would. It sounds nuts, but to say Josh Allen is elite, I need a guy who takes care of the football a little bit more than Josh Allen turns the football over with. He's still an exceptional quarterback, but I don't think he's even in that window. I think he's at number 6 on the outside looking in. At the end of the day, Baker Mayfield is not an elite quarterback, but he had his best season, and it was an elite season. He did have an elite season last year for the Buccaneers and proved himself that he should deserve this opportunity to be the starting quarterback of the Buccaneers. And last year, he was under a $4 million contract, Spence, and was able to dominate. He ran with it. He really led that Buccaneer team, was a true leader in that locker room, was a guy that laid it all out on the line, and sometimes more so than he probably should have physically as the quarterback when you consider who option number 2 was on the bench in Kyle Trask. But Baker Mayfield, you can never doubt his will to win, his desire, his passion for the game of football. And he does remind me of a guy like Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston was a very passionate guy, a great leader, great teammate that really you don't have anything bad to say about, but Jameis was more careless with the football and took more shots, a so-called gunslinger, whereas Baker Mayfield, he takes calculated risks. I can't say that about Jameis Winston. I think that truly is the primary difference between the two. Jameis was a gunslinger. Baker Mayfield takes calculated risks. And also, he is that teammate. He's the guy that the Buccaneers loved. And I really bought into Baker Mayfield whenever he was able to get this team to come back from, what was it, a 4 or 5 game losing streak midway through the season, if I'm not mistaken, there for the Buccaneers. And once he did, prove that he was able to bounce back from that and help lead this team to not only get back on top, but to win the division in the NFC South, I was sold on Baker Mayfield and thought there's no way that you cannot move on without Baker. You have to give him another shot. Even if it were just a 2-year deal, I wanted Baker Mayfield back here with the Buccaneers this season and in the years to come.
Yeah, I think it was a need for the Buccaneers and the locker room in general because of what we heard about Todd Bowles last season in his first season as a Buccaneers head coach, or was that 2 seasons ago? I guess that would have been with Tom Brady. Kind of the locker room wasn't really with him as much as it is now, and I think Baker Mayfield's a huge part of that. And if you lose a quarterback that's also a leader like Baker, heading into next season, your other option would probably be Russell Wilson. He's just not a leader. Justin Fields isn't a leader yet. You have to have a guy like Baker Mayfield in there right now for the Buccaneers. I don't think he's a bridge quarterback. I think next year, I think his numbers are going to be better because he's had more time to work with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and of course, Trey Palmer, I think is going to be really good next season for the Buccaneers. With the new offensive coordinator, again, I think Godwin's going to be in that Cooper Kupp role, like the Rams guy said, coming into Tampa Bay as a new offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers. And I think Baker Mayfield's game may even take a step up or at least be exactly where it was last year. I'm saying more touchdowns and more turnovers next season for the Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield. And again, what was it, 9 wins last season for Tampa Bay? I think 10 is not out of the question. I think a lot of it comes down to who the Atlanta Falcons end up with at quarterback position. And right now, I hope it's Justin Fields, but it's looking like Kirk Cousins probably going to get into a little bit more of that in a little bit with a guy like Justin Fields. But again, this is a huge signing for Tampa Bay, and it's gonna really look good for the head coach Todd Bowles because he cannot afford to have any instability with that quarterback position. If Russell Wilson were to come in and suck, he would be gone. I mean, Jason Light obviously as well really wanted Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans back. He gets him back. Now it's all on Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans to get this ship and continue to steer it in the right direction, maybe win 2 playoff games next season, or maybe even earn another one of these bad boys.
Now, just to prove to all the listeners and all of you guys, and really any and every football fan out there, Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield got him. I think it's a win-win. You look at it last year, Baker made, I believe, roughly $6 million with incentives. Now he's getting paid, what was it, about 30 a year, Spence?
Yeah,
with his new
30,
contract?
20, and 40, I believe.
Yes. So, you look at it, 7 times more money, technically with his incentives last year, 5 times the amount of money for one single season heading into next year and moving forward. But his average annual value, his AAV in the NFL, sits in at 16th in the league for quarterbacks behind Daniel Jones, Dak Prescott, Derek Carr, Deshaun Watson. So right in the middle of the pack with the average annual value with Baker Mayfield moving forward, sitting at 16. The guy played a little bit better than top 16 based on last year. So all in all, just a win for everybody. No complaints here from me, from my side. I think that Baker Mayfield could have got even higher base salary per year, but the incentives allow for the Buccaneers to make it work, to make it seem more feasible for them, and also to give Baker Mayfield more reasoning to ball out once again and improve his numbers to try to make a few extra $1 million off incentives, probably things such as passing yards, touchdown passes, also playoff victories, things of that nature to allow him to get to that dollar amount that he truly has earned based on the rest of the quarterback market in the National Football League. So, a lot going on with quarterbacks right now, Spencer, and obviously having Mike Evans back at wide receiver for year number 11 and year number 12 is going to be big for him. We'll see how many more 1,000-yard seasons he has left in the tank. I think for sure at least 1. I would like to see 2. But we all know realistically with receivers that when that downfall hits, when Father Time does catch up, it catches up quickly, a lot quicker than other positions. We saw Tom Brady play at such a late age. Receivers a lot different. And Mike Evans has been a physical receiver since day one when he was blocking. Terrence Newman, I believe, of the Cincinnati Bengals, threw him down, carried him 5 yards. It went viral. You're like, wow, this guy, a young receiver, a dominant receiver, but also can block downfield, unlike many receivers in the National Football League. So the Buccaneers, they have a chance to, again, run it back and win the NFC South once more. I would not be shocked, however, if the Atlanta Falcons do resolve their quarterback situation and they get off to a hot start early. I would not be surprised if the Falcons run away with this NFC South as well. I think it's those two teams, the Falcons or the Buccaneers, depending on how the Bucs draft and how the Atlanta Falcons hit in free agency with their quarterback position.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty similar to last season. Obviously, the Falcons are going to be a little bit better, so I think to win the division this year, it'll have to be 10 wins for whoever is the top of the NFC South. But again, it should be a good 3-team boat race because the Carolina Panthers are nowhere near being good. The Saints are continuously on the downfall. And like you said, got to come down to quarterback play for the Atlanta Falcons. But again, Buccaneers are the most stable in that entire division. They have the same core basically from the 2020 Super Bowl 4 years later, which is pretty incredible. The only difference would be Tom Brady and a couple of cornerbacks along the way. Really good for the Buccaneers. It's going to come down to next season. The defense playing as good as it did down the stretch of this year, and Baker Mayfield just taking care of the football and making big plays. And I think the Buccaneers are in a good spot to do that. And the offensive coordinator is going to be a big part of this next year as well. If he can be the same level as Canales or even better, I don't think Canales was as good as people say. I think he's a little bit overhyped, but we'll see how he does in Carolina. And I could eat my own words, but I do like the Buccaneers' new OC. I like Baker Mayfield. I like Mike Evans. I like Chris Godwin. I like Rachaad White. I mean, the Buccaneers' offense has so many weapons. And an offensive lineman away gives Baker Mayfield a little bit more protection in the pocket as well. And I think that'll send the Buccaneers over to the next level and maybe win 2 playoff games or go even on a further run next year in the playoffs if they can make it and win the NFC South.
Yeah, no, would be incredible. Would not be shocked. However, their schedule is very tough, very challenging. Again, when you win the division, you play a first-place schedule and play some of, if not the best teams in the NFL moving forward. So we talk about quarterbacks and the NFL, Spence. Let's talk about the 2021 NFL draft class and the quarterbacks, because there's been a lot of talk about guys such as Justin Fields. We saw Mac Jones just get signed by the Jacksonville Jaguars to sit behind Trevor Lawrence. Both of these guys, quarterbacks of that 2021 draft class. I know you have a few other names there, the quarterback, Spence, that you want to mention, but get into what you wanted to share here regarding that draft class, which we thought was going to be really good, but now there are some pretty big question marks regarding those quarterbacks.
Yeah, it seems like every time you look back at a draft class of quarterbacks, the first, 20 picks every single season, there's at least 3 to 4 quarterbacks in there. The 2020 quarterback class was really good. A lot of hype around those guys. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Tua is also a pretty good quarterback in the league so far. But again, we were on the hype train that year in 2020. We had invested in cards, gotten guys like Burrow and Justin Herbert that we still held on to. And I'm very excited and very happy that we missed out on the 2021 card crate because my goodness, the quarterbacks of that draft, even looking at Trevor Lawrence, he's the number one quarterback in that draft. But last season, I mean, he was awful. The injuries obviously had gotten to him. I think it played mind games with him. We saw him live in Tampa together. What was it, 30-0 at one point with him as the starting quarterback getting benched for who was it? CJ Beathard, I think, is still the backup quarterback in Jacksonville. Not anymore as of today. But again, you look at the top 5 quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence, what is he? Top 15, top 20 quarterback in the league, maybe. Then you have Zach Wilson, who was the number 2 overall pick. He's going to be
probably bottom 3 quarterback.
Yeah, he won't be a starter at all. He's a bottom 3 starting quarterback. The third pick was who was the third in that draft?
Trey Lance.
Yeah, Trey Lance. He's on the Dallas Cowboys still. He has no buzz around his name. Dak Prescott's their guy. Trey Lance doesn't even have a shot to start. The fourth guy is Mac Jones, the fourth guy is Justin Fields, and had a lot of hype around this guy's name at the start of free agency, or at least the start of the end of the league year last season, heading into this year's free agency, which starts at noon tomorrow. But I think the Bears were expecting, hey, we could get a first round, maybe an early second round pick for this guy. As of right now, the Justin Fields hype train has completely died down, as it always does with quarterbacks, with the hype that surrounds their name, especially guys that haven't proven themselves in the NFL. Fields is going to get a third or fourth round pick max for this guy. I don't think the Bears are going to get anything for him at all. Will he be a good starting quarterback? I think he will be a starting quarterback in the league. He's going to start off next season, the 22nd to 32nd best starting quarterback in the NFL. He's not even scratching the top 20. And then number 5, Mac Jones, the 15th pick of 2021, was just traded to be a backup quarterback for the first overall pick in that draft, Trevor Lawrence, who also doesn't have a lot of hype around his name anymore as he did maybe 2 years ago whenever he was just finally getting his feet wet and starting to be a good NFL quarterback. Because his first year, he was terrible. You gave him a mulligan because of the coaching situation down there in Jacksonville. Second year, got a little bit better. Third year, he was pretty good. Last year, though, I mean, was a very big downfall for them. I think they were 8-4 at one point, missed the playoffs, lost the AFC South to the Texans. The 2021 NFL draft with the quarterbacks just looking solely at them is such a letdown, and it kind of scares a lot of people away, I think, from the quarterbacks in this year's draft. Because are we sure about the number 1 overall pick being Caleb Williams? Are we sure that the LSU guy and Jaden Daniels, is he going to be big enough to play in the NFL and not take the hits and get the injuries that he took in college in terms of hits? Michael Penix, I think he was in college for 5 to 6 years. Drake May out of Carolina. They were supposed to be really good. They started off as a very good team last year, but again, they ended off not in the playoffs. I don't even think they were top 10 by the season. I don't even know if North Carolina was still ranked by the season end last year with how bad they played down the stretch. The quarterbacks looking at them, I think even just being able to tell the 2021 quarterback draft class was this bad 3 years from when they were drafted, I think should scare away some teams. And I think it definitely loses a lot of hype in terms of the fans of the teams that are drafting in the top 10. Are they going to be that excited about getting Caleb Williams next year? Obviously, he's a guy that is going to be the first overall pick, in my opinion. Jaden Daniels as well, Drake May. There's also, of course, one more in there before Michael Penix. I'm completely blanking on
AJ McCarthy.
His name. Yeah. But again, is he even a great quarterback as well? I mean, it's tough to look at these quarterbacks coming into the NFL next season and be that excited about them whenever you just take a look back at just 3 years ago and look at that 2021 NFL quarterback draft class that was just so bad. And Trevor Lawrence is the only guy still standing in that entire draft. And 3 of these guys could be out of the league within the next 2 years.
Yeah, no, it's brutal when you look back at it and see all these quarterbacks. And the difference between a good and great quarterback in the NFL today is very, very different. I mean, you see different guys and all the hype train surrounding them and the reality check that Trevor Lawrence had after having a good year 2, a terrible year 3. And the question marks of, hey, will these guys ever get another starting gig? I don't think Mac Jones will ever be another week 1 starting quarterback in the NFL. Trey Lance, I just don't know if he ever got a true shake at it, and I don't think he ever will get another true shake at it. I think he's kind of run off, and Justin Fields, I think that he'll have another opportunity. I think that he will end up being a good starting quarterback in the NFL. We saw it late as the season went on. The Bears, if they would have moved on from Matt Eberflus, which I think was the move, they should have drafted a quarterback. But if you're going to keep Eberflus, you keep that quarterback in Justin Fields, and they're not doing so. That doesn't seem to be the case. So for me, I'm a bit shocked by all of that. Zach Wilson is done. He'll never be a starting quarterback in the league anymore. Trevor Lawrence, I'm still going to give him, as you said, he was the quarterback under Urban Meyer a few years ago. That was brutal. That was practically his rookie season. So I'm going to give him a little bit longer, but I'm still waiting on Justin Fields to hit it off and to be that guy that we all thought he might be. And I'm not saying I expected him to be great. I thought Trevor was the better of the two in that draft class, but I did expect better from Justin Fields. And I think a fresh start will do that for him, especially when he goes with a place in an area in which they have consistency at offensive coordinator, play calling, and head coach, which is something they did not have in Chicago. And also the lack of weapons for Justin Fields. He had one receiver for a year, 2 years, DJ Moore. That's it, man. No help, no true running game. So give Justin Fields all the pieces around him, and I do think that Justin Fields will turn this thing around. And I'm excited for it, but now it kind of poses the question, what if the Browns would have kept and only held on to Baker Mayfield and actually believed in him and not coughed up all that they did for Deshaun Watson? They'd still have Baker Mayfield today. He won them their first playoff game in decades, and then they let him go after he had tore up his shoulder really bad.
Yeah, he would have a couple of playoff wins for the Browns by now. They would have been in an AFC championship by now, in my opinion. They got rid of him very, very soon. But going back to the Justin Fields thing, you're talking about stability. Hey, a new team that has a lot of weapons, a good offensive coordinator, a head coach, some stability that hasn't been existent in his career so far. Wherever he goes isn't going to have that. Atlanta doesn't have consistency. Minnesota would be the only place, and that would be if Atlanta got, of course, Kirk Cousins. But would the Bears trade into their own division? No. So it's going to be tough for him to find any stability anywhere else as well. So it's a weird thing to look at for Justin Fields. He could end up like these other quarterbacks. Trey Lance isn't going to get another shot anytime soon. Zach Wilson, I don't think will ever get another huge shot. He's kind of ended up like Sam Darnold did of the 2019 or 2018 quarterback class. So it's weird to see where quarterbacks end up so quickly and how quickly their demise can be in the NFL. And we've seen it every single year since at least 2015 with the Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota draft class. Those guys were kind of phased out within 6 years, really, in reality, basically 6 years of them being starting quarterbacks, and they were kind of out of the league. That was number one and number two. You're looking at all the way up to pick number 15, and these guys are out of the league in just 3 years nowadays. And by out of the league, I mean backup quarterbacks, even second or third string quarterbacks on a roster.
Yeah, no, and I love to keep up with the quarterbacks, and this class does concern me. As you said, I like your reference to 2021's draft class because there is so much hype. Oh, there's 4 really good, potentially 5 really good quarterbacks in this draft class, and those are the draft classes that I think you miss out on. And there's going to be one guy a little bit lower, say the 4th or 5th best ranked, that turns out to be number 1 or number 2 in terms of how they end their career. The top 2, if it's not a top 2 quarterback in the draft, I'm not drafting a quarterback. That's just how I would operate my team. Now, I know you're not asking for my expertise as a decision maker there, but at the end of the day, you look at how many guys are hits and how many guys are absolute flunks. They tend to be the top 2 guys pan out. The rest of it are crapshoots, and you don't know if they're any good. So for me, it would have to be a top 2 guy. And this year it is Caleb Williams as the top guy. And number 2, I think, is up for grabs. I don't think it's Drake May out of North Carolina. I just don't. I don't think he's ready. I don't think that his ability to process plays and pressures from defenses is quite up to par. And I don't think he's that number 2 guy. If Michael Penix Jr. could stay healthy, he might be that guy. But maybe after all, maybe J.J. McCarthy is the number 2 guy in this draft. He might. It sounds crazy, but he might be.
I know. It's a weird draft class, and there's so much hype. All these guys, I'm telling you, besides Penix, will be gone in the first probably 10 picks this year if you're looking at the draft board. A lot of teams need quarterbacks, and it's going to be good to see how the free agency shakes out on day 1 starting on Monday at noon. That'll be a good thing to kind of gauge. But if I'm a team looking for a quarterback, I would hope that the quarterback that I want in free agency isn't gone by the time the draft starts, so you can have both options. Obviously, it's going to be a tough thing to look for, but if you're Atlanta, I think that's what they're kind of hoping for, in terms of, hey, we either end up with Kirk Cousins or we get a rookie quarterback. And you don't want Justin Fields because he has so much mileage on him already. And has he really learned that much in the NFL? I don't think so. And again, starting over fresh could be a good thing, but at the same time, more instability for a guy like Fields. Unless he ends up like Baker Mayfield, I don't know how it's gonna be for this guy, because he's kind of a different quarterback than he was in college. In college, he was more of a pocket passer. In the NFL, he's become a scrambling quarterback who looks at one read and just runs away. Obviously, Atlanta's going to have a lot more weapons, but it's going to be interesting to see how a guy like Fields shakes out. Mac Jones is already a backup quarterback. Trey Lance is a third-string quarterback by the end of next season, in my opinion. Zach Wilson as well. Then Trevor Lawrence, top 15, maybe top 20 quarterback in the NFL so far in his career. It's an interesting thing to keep an eye on, and it's going to be weird to see what NFL GMs think should be the first overall pick next year, because you're hearing right now Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. By the time the draft starts, that could just be completely flip-flopped and people have fallen off of the Caleb Williams hype train. I think right now the big hype, though, is on Jaden Daniels, and I think that's going to change by the time we hit mid-April.
Absolutely. And again, the NFL offseason is unlike any other. There's so many moving pieces and parts, and it's not quite the regular season, but it's definitely the closest sport, in my opinion, as far as entertainment. From the time the season ends to the time the season starts with preseason, the NFL is king, and it proves it to us each and every year. As always, guys, that will do it for the podcast. Spence has one more thing. If you guys are watching on Spotify or YouTube, he put up his pause finger. What do you got?
I'll be remiss. My mom texted us and she said that she wants you to explain what this Baker Mayfield does for Levante David. What does this mean for Levante David now that the Buccaneers have re-signed Baker Mayfield and they've lost a little bit more cap space, Chris?
Well, I don't know. I think that maybe Levante David would come back. It sounds as if he joined the show, the Ronnie and T-Crash show, a little bit over a week ago, said he wanted to come back to the Buccaneers, and I think he'll find a way. I think when you get a guy like Mike Evans back, a guy like Baker Mayfield back, why not? Levante David come back. I think he'll take a decent contract, but a one-year deal, just like Rondé Barber did in his later years of his NFL career. So we'll see it all shake out. Thanks for the question, Mom, and thanks for posing that, Spence. As always, comment your thoughts down below. Who's your favorite quarterback in this year's NFL draft? Did the Buccaneers get a steal with Baker Mayfield? Would you rather have Kirk Cousins or Justin Fields this year if you were the Atlanta Falcons? Comment down below. Share this video. Like, comment, subscribe. The whole 9 yards. We do appreciate you.